Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday morning to you all. Hope you guys are waking up and feeling great out there this morning and having a great start to your day, great ending to your week, and beginning to your weekend out there. Here to bring you the latest information that we have on Hurricane Beryl. It is making landfall into the Yucatan Peninsula right at this moment. It'll cross the Yucatan Peninsula and then get over the Gulf of Mexico and not only have a chance to re-intensify, but also turn north and impact areas of the U.S. Mexico is still on the table for an impact also, but this has shifted north, guys. So more of Texas is now at risk of seeing impacts from Hurricane Beryl. So we still got another about 2 to 3 days to figure this one out. I think it'll probably make a landfall sometime late Sunday into Monday morning. So we basically have all weekend to really fine tune the forecast of this. And listen, I expect changes. I think that there's a lot of people downplaying the Gulf of Mexico. We've seen what the Gulf of Mexico can do with these tropical systems and how fast they can intensify. We call it rapid intensification, RI for short. And this happens a lot in the Gulf of Mexico, especially deeper into hurricane season. But we all know that the sea surface temperatures are well above average. I think the upper wind pattern will improve as we get into the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to go over all the latest information that we have on Beryl right now. Technically no longer a major hurricane. It's a Category 2 hurricane. Remember, major status is Category 3 or higher. But listen, I'm not going to completely rule out this becoming a major hurricane again in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm just not. Even though it's not even close to forecast to do so by the experts, I'm not going to rule it out. So we'll go over all the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. We'll go over a ton of model information. We'll talk about the environmental conditions for this system once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico that'll allow it to re-strengthen. And then we'll talk a little bit about those steering currents and what's going to allow this system to recurve north a little bit more dramatically than pretty much any time in the life of this system so far. And then we'll go over the weather for your forecast for today across the lower 48, and we'll break all that down. So everything will be time stamped out well. Definitely take advantage of that. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Thank y'all for the amazing support the last week. I really appreciate y'all so much. And if you folks got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. We're praying for everybody that's already seen the impacts of this over the last few days. We're praying for you folks in the Yucatan Peninsula. We just got to figure out what comes next with Hurricane Beryl. So with that being said, let's get rocking and rolling. So this is what's going on with it right now. The center of the storm right in here, making landfall into the Yucatan Peninsula. We do have some storm chasers from the U.S. in this area, so we'll probably get some video out this morning on what's happening. But it looks like the center of the storm is definitely already made landfall or is making landfall right now. If it isn't, it will here in the next literally 30 minutes to an hour, maybe a couple hours. So this is going to weaken quickly with land interaction. Just if you're not familiar with that, tropical systems, once they get over land, they begin to weaken. Okay. How long will it be over the Yucatan Peninsula? This thing's still moving at about 15, anywhere from 20, 22 miles per hour. This is only a very small stretch of land, guys. This is the Caribbean side of the Yucatan, and then this is the Gulf of Mexico side. It's only got, I would say, several hours at most to be over land before it gets back over this area right over here, which is the Gulf of Mexico side. And then it's going to try to get its act together slowly again. How much of the core of Beryl gets completely shredded? That's a big question. If it gets just decapitated, just absolutely ripped apart, it's going to take at least a day or so to really get into a state where it can intensify again. If it holds together over the next several hours, this will make the process of this strengthening happen a lot faster. Begin to get to that stage of happening a lot faster, okay? So this is a close look at it. It's making landfall right now. Intense convection, nasty conditions probably ongoing in the northern sections of the Yucatan Peninsula. But if you go down to Belize, you're not really seeing much at all except some gusty winds. Maybe you guys will have to let me know what you're seeing. But this definitely, I wasn't able to make that video last night. This definitely pretty dramatically shifted north, and all the forecast intensity maps, and just the trajectory of this storm has shifted north because of it. All right, So this is it, a close look, a wide look at this. Now I want to explain this really fast for you folks. Now we know that the core of this storm's over land, so it's in the process of weakening. How much will it weaken? We're not sure, but I can already tell you the upper wind pattern for this storm is still, it's not as good as it was a few days ago, but I would say that it's better for it right now than it was yesterday and the day before. I think it's improving somewhat, I guess is what I'm saying. I think it's definitely being impacted by shear still. That mixed with the fact we got land interaction. If you were following along in the weather community yesterday, Hurricane Beryl pretty much maintained. Remember we talked about the Western Caribbean being huge for the life of this storm? Well, it pretty much maintained itself. It actually weakened, but then it actually got bumped up from a Category 2 to a Category 3 hurricane for a period yesterday evening. It actually strengthened for a period. But what I want to show you here, I'm going to see if this is going to work, and it is, so we're good. Big plume of white here indicated all the moisture in the atmosphere from Hurricane Beryl. If you notice kind of these pitch black areas right in here, that's where it's dry in all levels of the atmosphere. I think this dry air right in here is going to get involved in Hurricane Beryl's cyclonic circulation. It's just how fast does it get rid of it? Does it close back off again once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico? If you see me sneeze or hear me sneeze at any point here in the next couple minutes, I'm holding back one right now, and it might come out, so you might get a sneeze in this video. But what I want you to notice is you see how these clouds are kind of dispersing outward like this, kind of going like this, and then they kind of go like that. It's doing it like this a little bit over here, but I think some shear is still impacting the western side of the storm. But you can really see it up here. Okay, yesterday and the day before, if you remember, this was dramatically, streaking across like this. Okay, that meant that the western side of the storm, northwestern side of the storm, was getting heavily impacted by shear, and it was basically kind of shearing off all the clouds this way. And you could see it on the satellite water vapor loop pretty well. Now, this outflow is dispersing outward a little bit better. This tells us that I think the upper wind pattern is improving. It's ventilating a little bit better. Like I said, it's just on land. So, I mean, it's going to weaken. It doesn't matter how perfect everything else is. So we get off this, okay? We move on the latest update on what's going on with the actual National Hurricane Center update here. And like I said, right now, still technically 110 mile per hour Category 2 hurricane. But, okay, this is dramatically weakening now. So the next update, this might be a tropical storm. And it's forecast to drop the tropical storm status as early as this afternoon. And it's already in the process of rapidly weakening because it's hitting land. Hurricane warnings continuing for the Yucatan Peninsula coastline. These will get dropped later on today. These tropical storm warnings on the Gulf of Mexico side of the Yucatan Peninsula will remain for the next, day probably, because you're going to get tropical storm force conditions as this continues to roll across the Yucatan. Okay, but we're moving past the Yucatan Peninsula. Most of this video is going to be moving past this. You guys are seeing the impacts now. It's a now thing for you guys. Definitely wishing you guys the best of luck and a speedy recovery after this thing does whatever it's going to do. So, you get over the Gulf of Mexico, all right? How weak will this be? Will it be a low-end tropical storm? Will it be a high-end tropical storm? Will it still be a hurricane? I doubt it'll still be a hurricane. This will probably drop the tropical storm status. And, look pretty rough on satellite. But we're expecting this. Gulf of Mexico here. We'll zoom out a little bit. Texas right here. A good chunk of Texas now in the cone. Even a very, very small section of Louisiana in the cone. All right. I'm telling you guys that just to let you guys know how much this has shifted north and even a tick east. Okay, so we get into 2 p.m. tomorrow. It's already strengthening, in the process of strengthening here in the southern and southwestern Gulf of Mexico. 65 mile per hour tropical storm. Bumps up to 70 mile per hour tropical storm. I'm telling you, in this area right here, I think that this could strengthen more than what is being forecast. And then it's back to Hurricane Beryl by the time we get into Sunday afternoon. Category 1, 80 mile per hour hurricane. That's higher than the last time I made a video, right? And it's now forecast up to a kind of a mid to higher grade Category 1 hurricane now. At 85 mile per hour Category 1 hurricane. Forecast to make landfall along the extreme southern tip coastline of Texas. But listen, this cone goes all the way to the Louisiana-Texas line. So they're saying there's a possibility of the center of this storm going as far north as way up here. And I think that's a reasonable possibility. I wouldn't rule out Galveston at all. Galveston. Corpus Christi. Definitely wouldn't rule out you guys, or anywhere between Houston and Corpus Christi. All right, you could see, if you tuned in from yesterday morning's video, I mean, this was way down here. It's bumped up significantly north, and we've been talking about the last couple of days. Hey, I think this is going to tick north, and it has. And I'm not saying, hey, Mitch called it. That's not what I'm saying. But the model guidance has consistently initialized south of where this actual hurricane has been. And it was a big conversation on social media that really was breaking that down like crazy. And it was great. It was a great conversation. And they're exactly right. I mean, Hurricane Beryl has been initializing north of model guidance, which means these models are not doing a great job. This happens a lot. But it's pretty wild stuff. Forecast is at now an 85 mile per hour Category 1 hurricane. And I think we're going to get a bump up to a Category 2. I think by the time we make a video this evening, the forecast will be for a 90 to 95 mile per hour hurricane. Okay, we'll see what happens. Big day of models today, for sure. After today, into tomorrow and Sunday, it'll be a huge day of watching what this system does in the Gulf of Mexico. Huge day. So this is the more traditional look from the National Hurricane Center. See if we have a new update. We don't. Okay. I know it says 110 mile per hour hurricane, but this will dramatically drop in the next update. Moving a little bit slower now. That's going to be a big thing later in the video too that we're going to talk about. Notice how it's moving at 15 miles per hour now. It's not moving at that 22 miles per hour anymore. West-northwest at 15 miles per hour. I think this will slow down even more, especially when it gets closer to the Mexico-Texas coastline. But I think we'll start to get hurricane watches up, tropical storm watches up for the Mexico and Texas coastline here in the next day or so, for sure. And eventually they'll get upgraded to hurricane warnings. So let's go over the latest model guidance. So we're going to take a look at the GFS, kind of the main models like the GFS, the European. We're even going to take a look at the Icon because let me tell you, if this thing ends up going further north of the Texas coastline, it's a major win for the Icon model. It was the first model to show it. It's just stuck to its guns, and I think it would be a huge win as far as verification for the Icon model, which isn't known for, it isn't a great model in general. It's just model guidance. It definitely doesn't have anything on the European and the GFS on average, okay? So this morning, this is making landfall into the Yucatan Peninsula. We expect this to weaken. I've said that multiple times, land interaction, all right? So that number will rise. As this number rises, that means this is a weakening system. By the time we get into this evening, this is back over the body of water known as the Gulf of Mexico. It's no longer a Caribbean system. We're in the Gulf of Mexico now. All right, so how much does this number drop? I wouldn't even pay much attention to the strength of this system on the model. It's mainly a where is it showing that it's going type thing with these models. I'll be completely honest. Now, the hurricane models I'm going to show you, I would pay attention a little bit more to that strength. But big trough diving down and to the central U.S. Okay, there's a weakening of steering currents here, I think, that really starts late tomorrow. But, all right, this is strengthening. All right, it's 1,000 millibar low pressure. I think it'll be deeper than that, which means stronger. This is Sunday morning. And then look, I mean, this thing is already heading north enough where we're pretty much, it's a sure bet this is heading towards Texas. And then Monday morning, sometime Monday morning, this makes landfall around Corpus Christi based off this run of the GFS as a sub 1,000 millibar low pressure storm, and it most likely will be a hurricane. And I would not rule out a Category 2 hurricane. Folks, like I said, I will not rule out a major hurricane. Back to major status, a Category 3, I'm just not. It's the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico can do some wild stuff. It really can. Now, let's look at the European model. Okay, so weakening over the Yucatan Peninsula all throughout the day, gets back over the body of water, Gulf of Mexico, begins to strengthen. The European is definitely European is definitely a stronger system in the Gulf of Mexico than the GFS. This is Saturday afternoon, big day of watching this over the Gulf of Mexico. Sunday, big day of watching this, and I really think this will have a chance to really intensify Sunday. If I had to bet a day, I think it would be Sunday, as this has been over the Gulf of Mexico for a good 24 to 36 hours. And I really think this is the day where it really starts to get its act together, potentially fast. Dare I say rapid intensification. Okay, we get into Sunday evening. This is staring down the Mexico-Texas coastline. As you can tell, that number's dropping. We're getting to sub 990 now. A decently, at least a moderate pace strengthening hurricane. We get into Monday morning. This makes landfall. I mean, look how slow it's going. I mean, this is in 3-hour increments. Okay, it's pretty slow. Finally makes a landfall kind of between Corpus Christi and Brownsville, a little bit further south than the GFS, around Monday morning to Monday afternoon. This would bring big impacts for all of southern Texas. And I know if you're tuning in from Louisiana, I would keep your eye on this thing still. I would. I really, really would. But Texas, I mean, this is looking like a sure bet you guys are going to get impacts from a hurricane. So now I want to see if we have... I'm going to do this on the fly, guys, so you guys bear with me. You'll thank me for it, just because I want to get the latest model guidance. Yeah, and unfortunately, we do not. I was seeing if we had... Yeah, we don't. So I was seeing if we had the latest 06Z European, but we don't. So let's look at the icon, a model that's done very well with picking up on the northern curve of this system. Now this gets into the Gulf of Mexico tonight sometime. We get into tomorrow morning. The icon's kind of the same as the GFS and the Euro. Tomorrow, it almost spends all day trying to get its act together again. And then tomorrow night and the Sunday morning, I think that this thing really starts to figure itself out, and especially in the Sunday. And I think we have an opportunity for this to really begin to strengthen at a pretty moderate to fast pace into, I mean, Sunday night too, as this makes landfall right into Houston, Galveston, as a sub 980 millibar hurricane. So the icon is still north of most model guidance. And I mean, I would say that's a reasonable possibility. And if you go back and look at the cone, remember, it goes all the way to the Louisiana-Texas line. And folks, if you look at the European ensemble, this makes up 51 members. I want you guys to note, if you can see it, let's see if we can go down here. Remember, let's go back to this really quick. The center of the storm making landfall right here. Okay, right into here. All right, just kind of keep that in your as a mental picture in your head. We go back and look at this. No, this. So it's making landfall right into here, right? So let's try to kind of right into here. That's exactly where it is. It's north of all this. All right, so it's on the northern section of this ensemble guidance. And if you notice by the yellows and oranges, that's where it's verifying better with shrink too. So it's verifying weaker and south down here. It's not verifying. Okay, that's where it says it thinks it is. It's actually right here. So it's north of model guidance. So this makes me continue to want to believe the northern members of the European ensemble. When we get this in motion here, gets into the Gulf of Mexico, these are pretty consolidated well as we're getting into Saturday, but we get closer to Sunday, this begins to spread apart. Guys, I'm telling you, I really think this is the case. I'll ignore all these members right into here because they're not initializing at all very well. And I'm not trying to hype this where this is the worst case scenario for the U.S., but I would more so believe these members because the way that where this system actually is. So you keep this going, and I mean, guys, this takes some pretty strong members into the Texas coastline. I mean, this is hefty. This is significantly different just from yesterday morning. We have many more members going into the Texas coastline. And unfortunately for the U.S., the more this turns north, all the northern members are the stronger members of this. I mean, you got some many sub 980 millibar hurricanes. You got even deeper, stronger storm systems. So Another great thing to look at, and this is on Tropical Tidbits, and here comes that sneeze. Or not. Okay, so sorry about that. But this is on Tropical Tidbits. This shows a hurricane model guidance here, and most of these members now have it going into the southern Texas coastline. Okay, and I mean, this is going to bring impacts inland too. I mean, we got to figure that one out too here in the future, as I think Louisiana, Arkansas will still get impacts from this, as the moisture from this will obviously go inland as it weakens, and we're going to have probably a tornado threat with this and all that typically comes with the dirty right side of a hurricane. But we'll figure that out as we get closer. We need to figure out what this is going to do in the shorter term now. But I want to show you this. Let's see if we got a new update. No, we don't. So right now it's a 971 millibar hurricane. It's probably weaker than that now. The millibar number is probably higher. All right, but I want to show you what it's initializing as. All right, so let's go back to some of these hurricane models. And we do have the newest 06Z running. We're going to go through a bunch of them. Let's go through the HFA model first. This is initializing pretty well. It's making landfall pretty much exactly where it actually is. Makes landfall. It is right now. This is weakened, so you're going to see this number actually rise, indicating weakening. This is going to get shredded apart. It's going to get back over the Gulf of Mexico. How bad does it get ripped apart over the Yucatan? It's a big question. And you can tell this thing's all discombobulated in the Gulf of Mexico. It just looks like a blob of storms. So how long is it going to take to get its act back together? Well, it finally starts to Saturday evening on this. Okay, 993, but it's still struggling. But it's starting to get that cyclonic spin to it again. We're getting into Sunday morning. That number's beginning to drop ever so slightly. It's a 991, 990. Sunday afternoon down to 985, 984, 981. It's dropping fast. We're getting into deep Sunday night, and this is as far out as it'll go, unfortunately. But it looks like we have a strengthening hurricane on approach to landfall to southern Texas, because this looks like this is heading almost north-northwest. It's not even moving northwest. It looks like it's moving more north than west. So I would think that this would go on and probably make a landfall probably into here or something, to the Texas coastline, as a strengthening hurricane. Okay, so let's go back and look at this model guide, see if we have the 06Z on this. And we do, but we only got 66 hours of it. Same thing, makes landfall in the Yucatan. This weakens about the same way as the HFA model, and this is the HMON model. Okay, so gets into the Gulf of Mexico, takes a good 24 hours to kind of pull itself together. It begins to a little bit faster on the HMON model. Saturday afternoon, you're already seeing some hints of strengthening in this, and then it's starting to drop. We're getting into Sunday, 988. 991, so it definitely is not getting its act together as fast tomorrow as the HFA model. But what does it do after this? What I can tell you is this is a lot further north than the HFA model. HMON model is still way out in the ocean and heading north, due north, just about. And I guarantee you this is probably a strengthening tropical system as it's heading right towards the Texas coastline. We will go back and look at the run from last night, and it is much further south. So that tells us the latest model guidance has a pretty big shift north. Okay, this is the run from last night. Has a landfalling hurricane somewhere between Corpus Christi and Brownsville, Texas. Now we'll try to do this again, catch the latest update, and we only have this through 39 hours, unfortunately. Get shredded apart in Yucatan, and then this now. Is this the H-Wolf model? Yeah, the H-Wolf model, which typically is the more aggressive out of the hurricane models, begins to strengthen this at a pretty rapid pace, even tomorrow afternoon. And guys, I could believe that. I could believe that if, I'd say this, if the core of this system does not get completely obliterated, I think tomorrow could be a big day for strengthening for this system. If it does, I think it'll take till Sunday for this to really get its act back together. But the H-Wolf model from last night takes us into a pretty significant hurricane, deepens this to major hurricane status, makes landfall between Corpus Christi and Brownsville, Texas, Monday morning, as a pretty nasty hurricane that would bring significant impacts. High-end Category 2 to low-end Category 3 hurricane. And I know right now that seems like the worst-case scenario, but I mean, I wouldn't say it's the worst case scenario. I would say that it's as far as you guys getting impacted, yes, it's a terrible scenario. But what I'm saying is I could see this easily being a Category 3 hurricane again. And this isn't Mitch trying to hype up stuff. I mean, I'm just being realistic. I really am. All bets are off. And this is when we're going to talk about why it could strengthen. Okay? All bets are off when you get these tropical systems in the Gulf of Mexico. I think, in my opinion, I think, and you guys in Texas are not going to like me mentioning this, but I'm sure you're already thinking it. I think Hurricane Harvey is a fantastic example of what this system could do. Harvey, if you go back and look at some of the past cones from the National Hurricane Center, kind of developed right down here. I mean, it kind of originated from way over here, but it kind of went over the Yucatan, I believe, and got into the southern Gulf of Mexico, and the steering currents were very light. And it kind of got its act together, had time, and then next thing we know, we had a major Hurricane Harvey that stalled out and just spun around Texas, dumping catastrophic rainfall totals over Texas. I don't think we're going to have that much of a stalling out thing, but as far as the strengthening like what Harvey did, I could definitely see something like that. So I think that it's a great analog for it. And, back to what I was saying, the cones for Harvey were just for a tropical storm Harvey. And then we ended up with a higher end hurricane. So sea surface temperatures, low to mid 80s. But what I want you to notice here is look right here, right up against the Texas coastline. You got a pocket of sea surface temperatures that are 29, 30, 31 degrees Celsius. That's equivalent to the mid to upper 80s in Fahrenheit. So that's rocket fuel as far as temperatures of the sea surface out here in the Gulf of Mexico for this system to work with. Okay, that mixed with the fact that the upper wind pattern is going to improve. I think it's already improved. I think it's just hitting land, so it's weakening. So you get into, and this is winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere, 35, 40,000 feet up in the air. We've been talking about this kind of stuff like crazy. If you're a new viewer, we'll try to explain again where you guys can understand. So I think that once this gets in the Gulf of Mexico, sure, it could deal with a little bit of shear, especially on the western side. But if you look at these streamlines here, you see how they're pointing away from the storm. Like this is pointing this way. This is pointing this way. You got a little bit of an anticyclonic flow here. Now this is kind of going against the storm. The western side of the storm, I think, could deal with some shear tomorrow. But I think the upper wind pattern is improving. You're getting a nice little outflow, especially from the northeastern side of this system. I think the western side of this system could be getting affected by definitely a little bit more of an unfavorable wind pattern here. But as you continue to move forward, and I think that is one of the key issues of why this won't. I don't think this will rapidly strengthen tomorrow. I think Sunday, if it rapidly strengthens, Saturday night into Sunday, that'll be the big day. Now we get right into here. Okay, I think the upper wind pattern gets a little bit better, especially as we're getting into Sunday. This is still over water, even though it's getting really close to land. This is like the wee hours in the morning Sunday. We got a nice upper outflow, still kind of weird right into here. And it's still kind of going inward, but it's kind of going like this here. I think the upper wind pattern isn't as good as what it was like during that period back over the tropical Atlantic before it hit the Windward Islands and areas of the Caribbean. But I think that it is certainly in an improved state compared to what we saw in the central and western Caribbean. And I think we have a nice outflow of this system. Air is being dispersed out from the system. And this is allowing for more air to rise, and that get dispersed out. Then more air rises, rising air, sustained convection. Convection means shower and storm activity. So I think the upper wind pattern does improve. I think it will deal with some shear, though. And I think it will battle dry air, especially tomorrow. And this indicates moisture in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. As we're getting into tomorrow, one thing you'll notice is the brown is more dry air, the green is moist air. One thing you'll notice is the center of circulation right here coming off the Yucatan this evening. See how the dry air trying to wrap into the system? You're not seeing a lot of moist air on the western side of the system. It's more shunted off to the northeast. And that is because land interaction has really disrupted the inner core of the system, allowing for dry air to finally wrap into the system after it's been so resilient. I think that it finally is going to get blasted by land interaction here. which it doesn't matter how resilient you are as a hurricane. If you go over land, you're going to weaken. And this continues to battle. We're getting into Saturday. This is a lopsided system. Most of the impacts are on the northern side. You can see it by kind of the moisture plot here where all the green areas on the northern side of the storm. But check out this dry air getting wrapped all the way into the system now. Okay, so it looks like the kind of the bottom edge of this system is very dried out. And it stays like that for a period. Dry air on the southern side, but watch what happens here. Right here in the Sunday morning. Notice moist air. I mean, you're getting a cyclonic flow of dry air around the circulation. Okay, but look at the inner core of this system. See how it's got moist air kind of wrapping all the way around that L? It's developing a core again to protect the heart and soul of this system, which is the low-level circulation, the surface low. So the low-level circulation is what we call it. So this continues and it develops an even more impact and just compact core, just a moisture bubble for this. And that is why I think the most significant strengthening of this system happens Sunday into Sunday night, even into Monday morning. As long as it's over water, it develops just a well-organized hurricane right at the last second, basically. So that's explaining that. Now we'll go over steering currents. For you folks that are wondering, hey, why is this turning north now? And if you've been viewing, then this is going to kind of be old news for you. But the main reason why is this ridge that's absolutely been baking the southeast and will again today is heading on off. So this is starting this evening. This ridge influence is still just going to be it's just going to be bringing awful heat today across the southeast. We'll talk about that more here in a second. But if you notice, there's a trough digging down, big trough digging down, splitting this ridge that was in place in half. So this is allowing for a ridge to flex in the west, and it's just pretty much weakening this ridge, and this is pushing off this way. Big trough digging down. Flow around this trough is going like this. Flow around ridging goes like this. Okay, but this isn't really an influencing kind of steering current anymore because this is heading on off. So low pressure is in the blue, high pressure in the orange-red color. So you see this blue color right here? That is Beryl coming up. Now, you see this white area, this void area here? That is a weakness in the flow. This trough creates a weakness. There's no more ridging kind of pushing this, pretend like this orange was still right here. The ridge was still over the southern sections of the U.S. That would continue to push Beryl, which is right here, this way into Mexico. But that's gone. This is pushed way out this way. It's not an influencing factor anymore. We got this trough. Now, we get this in motion. This weakness remains. This ridge is trying to flex in a little bit, but not enough. There's a wide open weakness right here. It feels that weakness. And a stronger system is always going to want to go further north. It wants to gain latitude, go poleward. And with this strengthening, I really think more so Sunday, I think this will do nothing but make this system turn north even faster. This weakness remains. Not only is this a weakness in the upper levels of the atmosphere, the steering currents really bog down. They slow down because there is a flow around this trough going like this and a flow around this ridge going like that. Okay? But this system really isn't close enough to this flow to really feel heavily influenced by it. It can feel it. It can feel the tug on it. Okay? But it's not feeling it much. So that's why it really slows down. That's why if you go back and you look at this, you see how the S here and the H here and the H here are really close together. So in that, 12-hour period, there's not a ton of movement. But if you back it up and look here, there's a little bit more movement here. This thing is going to slow down. That's why it's already slowed down now. It's only going 15 miles per hour. And that's why. Because the steering currents of this, find where we were at, is very weak because there's no influencing ridge and trough. But regardless, this trough is why this weakness occurs, and it opens up an avenue for this to head right towards Texas. And that's pretty much how that works, if that makes any sense. So hopefully it does. My big goal here is to always explain things where you guys can understand. But that's it on the tropics. We'll do it again this evening. 2-a-days will be a thing over the next few days throughout the weekend for sure. So as far as what's happening right now, guys, we have just a train of rain here moving across areas of the southern plains, panhandle of Texas, Oklahoma. Rain across Arkansas, rain across western sections of Tennessee, Kentucky, southern Illinois, Evansville. You're getting a lot of rain this morning, southern Indiana. We got some on and off showers across the northeast, waking up to a soggy start in the UP of Michigan and northern Wisconsin. But the western U.S. is pretty quiet and getting dominated by high pressure, brutally hot conditions. And there's going to be some portions of the country that are just going to be brutally hot. I mean, even the southeast, just one of the hottest days of the season, I think. Is it gonna? There we go. Been trying to get that out for 35 minutes. Finally got it out. Thank you for the people who said bless you. I appreciate you. But as far as watches, warnings, and advisories, like I said, both sides of the country are very hot. Right in the middle, that trough that we just talked about in the update on the tropics is actually cooling you guys down. That's a cooling down factor, a cold front associated with that. But excessive heat warnings. I think I got another sneeze coming. Being outside so long, probably pollen and stuff. Some kind of weed pollen, I don't know. But excessive heat warnings across the western U.S., excessive heat watches in the burgundy, heat advisory in the orange. Same thing over here. This purple color right here is excessive heat warnings. Brutally hot in areas of the mid-Atlantic and the upper southeast portion of the country, like North Carolina. Heat advisories, even for my neck of the woods. When we get heat advisories here in the central South Carolina, you know it is going to be hotter than Hades out there. And today will be no different. Deep South, hot, heat advisories up across the entire area. The excessive rainfall outlook, just a marginal risk in the green. So just a 5% risk of flooding. And the Storm Prediction Center, finally get a day where we don't have a slight risk. Just a very large marginal risk across the Ohio Valley, areas of the Great Lakes region and the interior New England region. And we do have a marginal risk here in New Mexico. Everybody else, just a general risk of thunderstorms. So not a big severe weather day. We finally get a break with that. But the southeast today, I'm going to kind of work through this pretty quick because this is going to really be a day where some people will get rain, some people won't. But the main energy flows up here in the mid-south. We're going to have that line of storms that are kind of in the western sections of Kentucky and Tennessee that will continue to move west to east across the entire mid-south, Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Alabama. This will make it all the way to the Appalachian Mountains. We're going to get some nasty storms probably in West Virginia today. Watch out Charleston. Watch out the eastern hills of Kentucky. If you're in the mountains vacationing, you're going to get some storms this afternoon. Look at all this storm action here in the Deep South. Alabama, Mississippi, southern Arkansas, and northern Louisiana. You're going to be begging for this rain ahead of this heat that is really going to flex its guns as we're getting into this afternoon. But Florida, hot day, stormy day, potentially some storms will get fired up. You see these storms drifting all the way down to the Gulf coastline in the Deep South. A separate area of energy we'll watch out for in Virginia, North Carolina. We can use the rain in Virginia for sure. We could get some shower and storm activity in Charlotte down to Columbia, maybe late this evening. I'll take it. But then all of it fizzles out with the loss of daytime heating. But temperatures today, I really want to zoom into my friends here in Georgia, to the Carolinas, to Virginia. D.C. could hit 100 today. Charlotte could hit 100. Raleigh will probably get into the low 100s. Columbia definitely will get into the low 100s. Might hit 103 today. And then you look at the heat index, folks. Just absolutely brutal. It is brutal out there. I mean, going to get to 110, probably 115 in areas. The Delmarva area, especially near those coastal waterways in Maryland, you're probably going to get a kind of influx of humidity off the waters. Maybe that breeze can help you out, but man, it is going to be brutally hot in areas of the Delmarva, basically all the way down to the Deep South today. So northeast today, we're going to get just some showers drifting through. They'll kind of make their way through northeast PA, through the southern sections of New York, and then they could intensify. New York City could get some storms this afternoon. Long Island, New Jersey, and these storms could drift through southern New England. So could get some storms as far north as maybe Maine. And then we might get some more storms that fire up this evening across western New York, western PA, and definitely could get some storms in Ontario, Quebec, southern Ontario. Look at these storms dancing around even late tonight across the coastal areas of Maine, New Hampshire, down to the Boston area. And then we get into like tomorrow morning, and we got some storms ongoing. These could be severe storms across the interior New England region for your Saturday morning. So that's something to watch out for. But the southern plains today, kind of the same thing. We got a boundary sagging south. That boundary is going to get those storms going across the deep south. It's also going to get these storms going across northern Texas too. So Dallas, Fort Worth, over to Abilene, maybe as far west as Lubbock, Odessa, all the way down into New Mexico, over to New Mexico, where you guys, the storms could have a little bit higher chance to hit severe limits. But any of these storms, even in the general risk area down here, could hit severe limits. They could. But these will kind of be slow movers. They'll kind of sag south and pack a punch. So if you're anywhere from, like I said, Amarillo down to Midland, down over to Dallas, Fort Worth, Shreveport, Little Rock, Jackson, Mississippi, over to Birmingham, some storms are most likely, and they'll eventually dip south throughout the evening hours. And then we're waking up tomorrow morning with maybe a little complex of showers and storms in western Texas. Up here in the north central U.S., we got this little spin ongoing inside this trough. So we're going to continue just to get an unsettled day of weather across the Great Lakes region. You won't see rain all day, but you'll at least have a decent chance to see rain anytime during the day. This is for this afternoon, for example. A little bit of pop-up activity in Iowa, southeast Minnesota, Wisconsin, seeing a little bit of storm activity. Northern lower Michigan, a little bit of storm activity. And this will continue to spin throughout the afternoon and evening. And then by the time we get into the overnight hours, loss of daytime heating, the loss of convection. We're getting some shower activity in the Dakotas, Nebraska. The western U.S., it's a quiet day of weather, but it's going to be very hot. The only area I'd watch is for an area of energy that will cruise on the upper portion of this ridge in Montana. Could deliver some showers, maybe some storms for central to eastern Montana later today. But we will watch a more organized area of storms along the New Mexico, Texas line right here, kind of west of Amarillo, that could pack a punch. That's why you do have that marginal risk. The immediate western U.S. is quiet and hot. Speaking of hot, deep south, very hot. The Carolinas, very hot. Mid-Atlantic, super hot. Just a brutally hot summer day. Once you get north of this boundary into Kentucky, the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, heck, even up here in the Northeast, it's a lot more of a pleasant summer day. It gets nice and cool up here with kind of the pesky clouds and the rain showers in Wisconsin and the UP and Michigan. Some areas in the UP might not get out the 50s. For July 5th standards, that's pretty wild. But certainly nothing's super uncommon when it comes to temperatures up there, is because you're so far north and against the cooler bodies of water of the Great Lakes. But look at these temperatures in the southwest. Someone's going to get well into the 120s in the desert southwest. The valley regions of California, brutally hot. Even hot into the lower elevations up into Washington State, 80s and 90s. The northern portion of the country, nice and pleasant though, 70s and low 80s, low humidity too. That's all I got. God bless all y'all. Let's see if we can catch an update. And we didn't. But God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day. We'll do it again this evening. And we'll just specifically focus on the tropics. You guys have a great Friday.